and what was the decision-making process that ended up with that kind of a score line. But people have a tendency in soccer to look at just the score and think that, oh, that team that won 3-0, you know, it was obviously a landslide match. That's not how the soccer games go all the time, right? So this is focusing a little bit more on process than outcome.
I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, no.
What do you think about places like states like California, where they're having state-ups as young as, I can't remember which one is the youngest state-up they're playing right now, but I want to say, you may know this.
I'm not sure.
But I want to say it's like U9.
Cal South does State Cup. They don't go any further than State Cup at U10. Cal North doesn't begin until U12.
So it will be U10 then, the youngest UC.
That a couple of the states are doing, yes. U11, U10.
And then what do you think about that?
Bad. We don't advocate it at all. And the majority of the state associations are not doing that. That's very much an outlier. Okay? And in fact, on that line, regions 1 and 4 are the only ones that have regional competition at U12. Regions 2 and 3 don't begin regional competition until U14. So if you go into State Cup in one of those two regions, at U12, the furthest you can go is the state championship. Okay? So this is one of the things that we're working on, why we're doing things like today to get ourselves more and more on the same page. Because we have some differences from region to region, state to state, league to league, club to club, and some of these issues, you know, such as when we begin State Cup type of competition, right, we need to get cleaned up.
What age is the national tournament? At what age do they start?
U14 on up.
Okay.
And that's why regions 2 and 3 begin their regional competition at U14 on up. Because the intent of regional competition is to find a regional winner to go on to the nationals. There's no point in having a regional winner that's not age group qualified to go on to the national finals.
I was just going to say, to clarify, so the number one reason to not have that type of competition is that it inhibits player development? Would that be a correct statement?
I would agree. It's a matter of, partially, it's a matter of too much too soon. All right? Think of the emotional environment surrounding the field on the part of the adults at a U10 State Cup final, and how excited, intense, highs and lows, the emotional highs and lows of the adults around that field. Because I guarantee you the majority of adults won't be able to contain themselves, right? To just keep a total even keel throughout that game, right? When their kids are out on the field playing, all right? So every little mistake that your team makes, a goal is scored against you and whatnot, it's anguish. Now, psychologically, emotionally, you're 9. You are 9. Okay? You have the emotional, psychological strength of a 9-year-old. How good is that? Right? How developed is the emotional fortitude, right? To be able to have a thick skin at 9 and ignore the oohs and ahs of the crowd. Right? Most 9-year-olds are going to be in tears in that environment. Right? It's too pressure-filled, emotionally pressure-filled. Right? It's the psychological impact that then says to kids, eventually when they get old enough to say no to mom and dad, that they get to that dropout thing that we talked about at the very beginning today, and by the time they're 12 to 15, is the general range is when they're saying, I've had enough, I'm done. Okay? And if it's because it was too pressure-filled, their soccer experience, odds are they'll quit soccer totally. It's not just a matter of, I'm going to drop a division, right? I'm out of it 100%, and I'm off doing something else entirely. That's part of what we want to avoid. If we wait until they have the emotional makeup to handle that kind of a stressful environment, emotional stressful environment, where we're saying now we're playing for all of the marbles in the world, I need some emotional fortitude to be able to deal with that kind of an environment. Right? You see men on World Cup national teams cry at the outcome of matches, okay? Because of the emotional stress involved. Right? So think about the psyche of a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old. And the other reason, Jeff and I talked about this in the drive up a little bit from the airport, is I think we should always have another carrot further down the stick. for the kid to be trying to get to. Okay? I think if we give them everything too soon, it's no wonder they're jaded by 15 and they decided, well, I've done everything there is to do in soccer, I'm out of it, sort of thing. Well, if we wait, hey, you have to be a certain age before you get to play in that state cup. You have to be a certain age before you're allowed to play in the stadium, okay, for the final, okay, sort of a thing. You have to be a certain age before you can earn this next piece and that next carrot and the next carrot and the next carrot down this very long stick. All right? So this is, nice segue, into short and long-term perspectives. So we, the adults, have to have the long-term perspectives. They're 9 years old, 13 years old. Their lives are short-term perspectives at 13, okay, at 9. It's the adults that need to have the long-term perspective as not only what is happening at today's match, the fall season, this soccer year, but the next year, and 5 years, and 10 years down the road. Okay? And that's where a drawn-out, expansive player development curriculum for a club comes into play. The kid comes in at U6. Where do we want him or her to be when they're U19 and they exit? Hopefully we've kept them in between. I know I'm going over, but these are just samples of things that are taught. It's not an exhaustive list, just stages of things to develop and to teach to the kids. This we break down by chronological, biological stages of development. So childhood goes roughly age 4 to 9 for its infancy. Okay? Then roughly after 9, age 10 to 14 is puberty. Roughly 15 to 23 is adolescence, and then adulthood, young adulthood. Again, this isn't exact. There's overlaps, okay, as to when children move from puberty into adolescence and such biologically. But these are the middle of the bell curve categories. Here across the top row is the training environment, the things that we would look to have happening in the training environment for those age groups. And then this bottom row is the environment that we're looking for at their matches. So for example, with the kids in puberty age roughly 10 to 14, lots of combination play on both offense and defense. How do I combine first and second attacker, first and second defender type of play? Lots of decision-making environments, tactical decision-making environments. Lots of psychological positive reinforcement with proper correction on ball skills, tactics, etc., fair play. How do I use my skills in game situations? Teaching that in our training sessions. Tactically working on the roles of attack and defense, basic principles of play. Width, depth on the attack, concentration on defense, etc. Okay? Exercises, that is, activities that I do in the training session are physical things, exercises, beginning of endurance, flexibility, beginning of speed development. Match environment for the under 10s should be 6 aside, the under 12s 8 aside, the under 14s 11 aside. We advocate that we hold off on tryouts where you make the cut, or you don't make the cut until 13, until you're a teenager. All right? Who am I to tell a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, you're not good enough? Right? I have no clue. I don't care who you are. Anybody that tells you they have a clue as to how a 9-year-old will develop 10 years later is lying to themselves and to you. Right? There's now decades of information from the academies. Little Shaw in England as an example, where they brought in the best players to try to develop into professional players and into the national team. And 90% or more never make it to being a pro. They were prodigies at a certain age, right? And they developed certainly more, right? But the whole thinking that, oh, we can identify talent that occurs down the road is a misunderstanding that a lot of people have. Here's the fact. Human development is a messy process. I don't care if it's human development in sport, in academics, socially, emotionally. Human development has no clear-cut path that works for every one of us the same. So all I can do as a soccer club in terms of developing soccer players is to put them in the best environment that my club can produce in terms of facilities, support, staffing, experiences in terms of training and matches and so on. All I can do is put them in that best environment possible and they will all grow differently. Every one of you grew differently as athletes. Every one of you, us in this room, grew differently as students. Okay? So that's the best that we can do. There is no one plan. I don't care who the plan comes from. USU Soccer, US Soccer, another country, whatever, that says this plan works for every human being in terms of soccer player development. And you can put any player into this and they'll all come out excellent players at the end. That's a lie. That's not possible with human beings, right? At all. So all we can do is create the right environment, right? In training sessions and matches. To an extent, the cream will rise to the top in terms of the elite players, right? And the reason there's not that many elite players is, you know, all of the factors that go into that. And when that happens, it happens for different players at different ages. And one of my coaches at a club, he's now the director of coaching, but he ended up playing in the A-League, which is what we used to call our second division professional level in this country. Okay? So he ended up as a pro player, but he didn't blossom until age 20. He didn't make the ODP team. He tried out every year, didn't make it until he was age 20 on the adult ODP. Right? The whole late bloomer thing. There's early bloomers, late bloomers, okay? It all changes. Off-the-field habits that coaches and parents and clubs need to teach. We need to teach it as a club. We need to teach it to the parents, because the parents are the ones that have the most time with the kids that influence their meal choices, nutrition, their hydration choices. Drink a Gatorade before the match, not a 64-ounce Coca-Cola, okay? Sort of a thing. Their sleeping habits that impacts their rhythm, okay? As an athlete, getting the proper amount of rest and such. Hygiene that impacts them as an athlete, okay? And so on. All of these types of off-the-field things, there's more, but those are just samples, okay? The life of balancing their soccer with all the rest of their lives, their academics, social life, etc. Okay? Development is impacted by the club's ability to provide facilities and coaching. We go about developing our coaches. We begin to get our coaches into coaching education and such. And then we give them a stack of cones and a couple of balls and say, go develop players. Well, that's like giving a teacher a piece of chalk and a chalkboard instead of a computer and internet and all the tools that a classroom teacher could use to really expand the teaching and learning experience in a classroom. To expand the coaching and learning experience on a soccer field, they have to provide the tools to the coaches that go to the coaching education. So the proper fields, portable goals, goals of different sizes, balls of different size and weight and shape that impacts ball skills, lots of other tools for coaches to use. And so this is part of providing facilities that impacts player development and the quality of the coaching.